Now, there will be an opportunity to put questions to our first three speakers immediately after our next speaker, Brian Woodford, who's Managing Director, Public Sector, Vodafone, and Brian's going to be looking at digital opportunities for Scotland.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everybody. So, as Vodafone and Virgin Media, we're very pleased to be here today. Very pleased to be part of the sponsorship organisation to help facilitate this. And the reason is because we believe Scotland has a unique position right now to take advantage of quite a significant change in the world of IT and also start to develop that into how public services can truly be reformed. Just before we get into it, I want to share a very quick story with you. I was getting a haircut the other day and was talking about various things that were going on with a guy at the end of the road, and he said, "So what's going on next week?" And I said, "Well, it's a Digital Scotland thing." He said, "Oh, Digital Scotland, that's very interesting." He kept asking questions about it. I said, "Are you interested in Digital Scotland?" He said, "No, I'm not interested in Digital Scotland at all. I couldn't care less. But every time I talk about it, your hair goes up and it makes it easier to cut." It's a big subject for us all. And Scotland are no strangers to innovation. If you look at the heritage where Scotland has come from, it was always a part of the world that embraced and led change. And we believe that Scotland's public sector has got a huge opportunity to do that right now. So this is absolutely at the heart of how do you look at GDP growth as well as public services reform. Those are the two key anchors for us about why this is so relevant. If we look at McClelland and Christie and what they give us, and to paraphrase and simplify, contact management, identity management, big data, very, very, very clear, simple direction about how we should embrace and what we should do to start to enable some of the things around public services and technology to come together to change the outcome, and as we heard earlier from Kay, some of the new co-production areas around public services. So embracing tools that are coming through like 4G as it comes out, apps, smartphones, tablets, super fast broadband, fibre optic networks, bringing all these things together are a significant input into that co-production of new public services. We call it better ways of working. And what we're also looking at in Vodafone is how we can play a significant contribution in how the country can change its way of working. We've got to. It's a bit funny coming on last because a lot of the arguments have already been made. But the economic argument is absolutely crucial behind this right now. As an economy, we're borrowing £2 billion a week. And if we just did the economics on this, I clearly won't do the politics on this, but borrowing £2 billion a week, the service repayments on that alone are an anchor on growth. If you've got GDP more than 42% in your public sector, that's another anchor on growth. And with the European Union in the state it's in, large trading area for us, it's another anchor on growth. Those three things in themselves are a huge anchor on our ability to grow economically. And with an ageing population where we've now got more people above 60 than under 16, the demand on our public services are just going to get greater and greater and greater. So the burning platform is here, and it's right now. And it's not really an option to carry on as we are. And again, I make no political statement on that. That's just, I think, a statement of fact, which hopefully we would all see. On the technology side of things, some academic commentators talk about a Copernican shift. And Copernicus was the guy, I remember, who found out that the world wasn't the centre of the universe and that the sun didn't rotate round, but actually it was the opposite. And it was quite a revolution in his day. It changed the way people thought, it challenged the church, it challenged the leaders. And right now, the information age is the biggest change on our society since the Industrial Revolution. And we're probably about 10 years into it. So the opportunity to take what's coming through and to merge that into our public services is absolutely right here and now, and hopefully we would agree, not optional. Creative minds are turning to how we can use digital services, and already we're seeing technical innovation in schools, communities, GP surgeries, libraries, courts, other community-based settings, and people are turning it into things that they want to do for themselves. So the co-producers that Kay talked about are already acting in our community outside of the traditional forms of public service product development, if you like. Forward-thinking organisations have spotted the economic productivity. We heard about the business cases that are going on in Northern Ireland and pay massive tribute there. There's a huge amount of work gone on over, I think, probably about 10 or 15 years to get to the place that Paul was telling us about earlier. As I said earlier, my company has fundamentally embraced this in terms of some of the changes we've been going through before I joined Vodafone and as we're going through right now with some large integration work about changing how we work and challenging the basis of what we do every day, where we do it and how that works. But it's not just about rolling out technology. That's just a simple input. It does go into building estates. It goes into how we think about our processes. We heard about process change earlier as well. And it's also about culture. We've got to understand that culture is a significant part either in blocking and stopping or in enabling. And if we miss that point as we start to embrace change, we certainly won't get there as quickly as we could. Part of that cultural change is seeing different partnerships come together. I'm delighted to be here with my colleagues from Virgin Media. We've come together in Scotland because we also believe that coming together and changing the way that we think and work together in partnership could also create a much more relevant input into the public service agenda for Scotland. So there's some quite big things coming through shortly. We've got the Commonwealth Games, we've got the independent referendum, we've got the Ryder Cup, some big moments where Scotland will be centre stage of the world in a similar way to G8 is at the moment in Northern Ireland. And again, I think there's some time now as we look at what's going on in certain public sector procurements to start to show some early winnable case studies in terms of how we can see Scotland really show that it's leading the way forward in some of these reforms. Swan, it's a once-in-a-generation enabler that will help better joined-up services. It's the platform, we believe, to enabling GDP growth and public services change. And again, once in a generation, well, it is like that. If we get it right, it will enable so many things for the next 10, 15 years and build a solid foundation. If it doesn't go quite as planned, it will set things back potentially, which is why so many people are concentrating so hard on making it work well, obviously. But I think the thing in conclusion for me really is we've got this Copernican shift in the world. There's the burning platform. There's the opportunity to embrace this rather than to fear it. And I just want to break down some of the areas that I think are really relevant in terms of contact, information and knowledge management, and some of the inputs that 4G can start to make this relevant from. Contact. I remember doing some work in the Cabinet Office quite some time ago now, and we measured about 400 million calls that were coming in and hitting government. There's probably about three times that, but we could measure about 400 million of them. And we did a classic sort of consultants box, a 2x2 thing. Complexity and importance on the axes, low and high in terms of each of those. So something that was low importance and low complexity, when's the library open? And the best story I heard about that was it was cheaper to ring the people in the council for them to open their window and check the cinema times than it was to ring the cinema, but they were doing it. So when's the library open was one. Something that would be complicated but not important, a tax issue. I don't trust the tax man, he doesn't trust me, and we've got to have lots of phone calls about it. Something that would be really important but not complex, my house is on fire, get here quick. And something that would be both complex and important would be something like a debt issue or a health issue. And if you take the debt issue, if you solved it at source, you'd solve maybe a health issue, maybe a crime issue, a police issue, a courts issue, a probation issue, prison issue, so forth. Now, the interesting thing was that less than 3% of those 400 million calls were in that highly complex, highly important area around, say, debt management. And over 95% of the calls were in the tax and the library issue. So the whole point there was not just a channel shift, it's actually how do you start to align your resources completely differently and think about contact completely differently to deal with those 3% calls that actually have the biggest impact on public funds. And what do you want to do around re-resourcing yourself around those? For me, that's where contact really starts to come out of McClelland, and how do we start to think about that uniquely in Scotland? And I think the unique opportunity here is that we're not encumbered by all the stuff that goes on down south, it's got much clearer, sharper decision makers and people who are much more aligned to an agenda around outputs and outcomes, which means the opportunity really is here to shift that dial. On information and knowledge management, so again, understanding the opportunity of sharing information and creating knowledge around a citizen to change how you align services is absolutely here and now. This isn't future technology. This isn't stuff that's we have to wait 5 or 10 years for. This is available, and most of this has already been bought. So this isn't even stuff that government have to go out and procure. But understanding how that can work, understanding the impact of that, and putting that back into those new service lines and the new products that public services want to put out into citizens, and how you orientate your service delivery around that, I don't think we're doing so well now, and has got a huge opportunity. So the contact, the information and knowledge management are things that are here today. These aren't new things, but we need to make more use of them. 4G is around the corner. So we have a contractual commitment that 98% of the population will be covered by 4G by 2015. And we're working very closely with Mike Nielsen and his team in terms of some of the confidential elements of the rollout of that and how that can start to be planned into some of the thinking for Scotland at large. But this is going to be a step change in the delivery of data services. And I wouldn't want to prejudge now how other people might want to use the impact of 4G in changing how services can be delivered. And it's not just around telemedicine, telehealth. We've got smart metering going on, intelligent SIM cards, proactive monitoring for old people in homes, changing the basis of where people receive healthcare and those sorts of things. I think those things are fairly easy to guess at now. I think it goes back to the point Kay made earlier around who are the co-producers and who will start to see new ways and find innovation in their own way to want to see how they can use things to change how they receive public services. And that will be an interesting challenge. So we see our role as to really help to change the market and the service delivery from the inputs that we can support with, but also to plan for those who are left out. With our partners, Virgin Media, we really do believe that Scotland are uniquely placed to do something quite extraordinary, and we really want to play a part in that. Thank you.